The autumn rain drummed against the windows of our small apartment as I stirred the pasta sauce, my phone propped against the backsplash displaying a recipe I was desperately trying to follow. It was our third anniversary, 3 years since Marcus had walked into that coffee shop where I worked, covered in soot, still in his FDNY t-shirt, ordering the strongest coffee we had after a double shift. I glanced at the clock, 7:47 p.m. He'd said he'd be home by 8 and Marcus was never late. It was one of the things I loved about him, his reliability, his steadiness. In a world that felt increasingly chaotic, Marcus was my constant. My phone buzzed and his name lit up the screen. My heart did that stupid flutter it always did, even after 3 years. "Hey babe," his deep voice crackled through the speaker and I could hear the exhaustion threading through it. "I'm about 15 minutes out, how's dinner coming?" "Well, I haven't burned anything yet, so we're doing better than last anniversary," I laughed, remembering the smoke alarm incident of 2023. His warm chuckle filled my chest with that familiar comfort. "That's my Jamie, listen, about tonight, I have something important I need to talk to you about." My hand froze mid-stir. There was something in his tone, not quite nervousness, but a weight that made my stomach tight. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. Yeah, he said quickly. It's big. I've been thinking about it for a while now and I need to talk to you face to face. I promised you a surprise tonight, remember?" I did remember. 2 weeks ago over breakfast, he'd been unusually quiet, and when I'd asked what was on his mind, he just smiled that crooked smile of his and said, "You'll see, anniversary night, I've got a surprise for you." I'd been imagining all sorts of romantic scenarios. Maybe he'd planned a weekend getaway, or finally agreed to get the dog we'd been discussing, or perhaps he'd managed to get tickets to that Broadway show I'd been dying to see. "I remember," I said softly. "Marcus, you're kind of freaking me out here." "Don't be freaked out," he said, but I could hear something shift in his voice. "It's not bad, Jamie, I promise, it's just important, life-changing maybe, but we'll talk when I get home, okay? I love you." "I love you too," I whispered, but he'd already hung up. Life-changing? The word echoed in my mind as I mechanically continued cooking. What could be life-changing? My thoughts spiraled through possibilities, each one more anxiety-inducing than the last. Was he sick? Was something wrong at the firehouse? Did he want to move? Did he want to break up? No, that last one was ridiculous. Marcus wasn't the type to break up on an anniversary. Marcus wasn't the type to break up, period. We'd weathered 3 years together, including the COVID lockdowns, including my father's death, including the night Marcus had been injured in that warehouse fire, and I'd spent 6 hours in a hospital waiting room convinced I was going to lose him. But still the uncertainty gnawed at me. I set the table with our nice plates, the ones we'd gotten as a housewarming gift when we'd first moved in together. I lit candles. I put on the playlist Marcus had made for our first anniversary, the one with all the songs that meant something to us. John Legend, Sam Smith, Hozier, music that felt like home. The door opened at exactly 8:03 p.m. Marcus stepped inside and for a moment I just looked at him. He was in his civilian clothes, dark jeans and a gray Henley that made his brown eyes look almost golden in the candlelight. His dark hair was slightly damp from the rain, curling at the edges the way it always did when it got wet. At 6'2" he still had to duck slightly under our quirky doorframe, a habit that made me smile every single time. But tonight, there was something different in his expression. A mix of excitement and apprehension that I'd only seen once before, the night he'd asked me to move in with him. "Hey," he said softly, setting down his bag and closing the distance between us in 3 long strides. His arms wrapped around me and I buried my face in his chest, breathing in that familiar scent of him, clean soap, a hint of smoke that never quite washed out, and something uniquely Marcus. "You smell like rain," I mumbled against his shirt. "And you smell like Italian food," he countered, pulling back to look at me. His hands framed my face, thumbs stroking my cheekbones. "You look beautiful." I scoffed. I was wearing sweatpants and one of his old academy t-shirts, my blonde hair thrown up in a messy bun. "I look like I've been cooking." "Exactly," he grinned, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. The nervousness was back. "Marcus, you're killing me here," I said, gripping his wrists. "What's going on?" He took a deep breath, his chest expanding under my hands. "Let's eat first. I promise I'll tell you everything. I need a minute to figure out how to say it." We sat down to dinner and I tried to act normal, tried to make conversation about my day at the graphic design firm where I worked, about the new coffee place that had opened on the corner, about anything and everything except the elephant in the room. Marcus played along, but I could see him pushing his pasta around more than eating it, could see the way he kept opening his mouth like he was about to speak and then thinking better of it. Finally, I set down my fork with more force than necessary. Okay, enough, Marcus Chen, you tell me right now what's going on or I swear I'm going to lose my mind. He looked up at me and in the candlelight I could see actual fear in his eyes. Fear. Marcus, who ran into burning buildings for a living, who'd once carried a woman and her baby down 12 flights of stairs through thick smoke, who'd been my rock through every anxiety attack and panic spiral I'd ever had, was afraid. That's when I knew, whatever he was about to tell me, it really was life-changing. Marcus pushed his chair back and stood up, packing to the window. He stood there for a long moment, hands shoved in his pockets, shoulders tight with tension. The rain had picked up, creating rivers down the glass that cast moving shadows across his face. You remember last month when I went to that conference in Seattle, he finally said, not turning around. I nodded, then realized he couldn't see me. Yeah, the fire safety leadership thing. Right. He turned to face me, leaning back against the windowsill. There was a guy there, Captain Rodriguez from Los Angeles County. We got to talking, had some drinks, traded stories, and he told me about this position that was opening up. My stomach dropped. Los Angeles. He was talking about Los Angeles. It's a lieutenant position, Marcus continued, his words coming faster now like he needed to get them all out before he lost his nerve. At one of the busiest stations in LA County. It's a promotion, Jamie, a big one, better pay, better benefits, and the experience. The experience would be incredible. I'd be leading my own team, making real decisions, really making a difference. I sat frozen, my hands gripping the edge of the table. Los Angeles, 3,000 miles away from New York, 3,000 miles away from my job, my friends, my life. When I managed to whisper, they want someone by February, so about 3 months. 3 months? 3 months to uproot everything, to leave behind the city I'd lived in my entire life, to start over in a place I'd only visited once for a cousin's wedding. Say something, Marcus pleaded, moving toward me. Jamie, please say something. I started, then stopped. What was there to say? This is what you want. He crouched down in front of me, taking my hands in his. His hands were so much bigger than mine, calloused and strong hands that had saved lives. It's an incredible opportunity. The kind of thing that doesn't come around often, and I know it's a lot to ask. I know you have your job here, your friends, your whole life. That's why I need to know if you'll come with me. There it was, the question underlying everything. You're asking me to move to Los Angeles, I said slowly, trying to process. I'm asking you to build a life with me, he corrected gently. Wherever that is, Jamie, I love New York. This city gave me you, but I need to know if we're in this together, if we're building towards something bigger than just this. He gestured around our small apartment. Just this, I repeated, feeling a spark of anger ignite. This is our home, Marcus. This is 3 years of us. This is. I know, he interrupted, squeezing my hands. God, Jamie, I know, and I love what we have here, but I'm 32 years old and I'm still working the same position I was working when we met. I'm watching guys younger than me get promoted, get opportunities because I've been playing it safe. Staying in one place because it's comfortable. So I'm holding you back, I said flatly. No, he stood up abruptly, running his hands through his hair. That's not what I'm saying at all. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Jamie. You're the reason I wake up every morning excited about life, but I can't help feeling like we're both just treading water. You've been talking about wanting to freelance for years, but you stay at that firm because it's stable. I've been wanting this kind of promotion for years, but I've turned down opportunities because they meant leaving New York. He was right, and I hated that he was right. I had been talking about going freelance since we met, building my own client base, having the freedom to work from anywhere. But I'd been too scared to take the leap, too comfortable with the steady paycheck and the familiar routine. When do you need an answer? I asked quietly. They need to know by the end of the month, 3 weeks. 3 weeks to decide the entire trajectory of our future. 3 weeks to choose between the life I had and the life Marcus was offering. Can I think about it? My voice sounded small even to my own ears. Something flickered across Marcus's face, disappointment, maybe, or hurt, but he nodded. Of course, Jamie, I need you to know that whatever you decide, I love you. If you can't do this, if you need to stay here, then I'll figure something else out. I won't lose you over this. But even as he said it, I could hear the lie underneath. Or not a lie exactly, but a promise he couldn't really keep. If I said no, if I refused to go, he would stay. He would turn down this opportunity. And eventually, maybe not next month or next year, but eventually he would resent me for it. He would wonder what his life could have been if he'd been brave enough to take the chance. I need some air, I said, standing up so quickly my chair scraped against the floor. I need to think. Jamie, it's pouring rain. I don't care, I said, already grabbing my jacket from the hook by the door. I'll be back, I need space. I was out the door before he could protest further, down the 3 flights of stairs and out into the wet October night. The rain immediately soaked through my thin jacket, plastering my hair to my face, but I didn't care. I just walked, no destination in mind, just the need to move, to think, to breathe. The streets of Brooklyn were quieter than usual, the rain keeping most people inside. I walked past the bodega where Marcus and I bought our Sunday morning coffee, past the park where we'd had our first real date, past the bar where we'd celebrated every birthday and promotion and milestone for 3 years. 3 years? Was 3 years enough to uproot your entire life for someone, or was 3 years nothing in the grand scheme of things, just a blip, just one chapter in a much longer story? My phone buzzed in my pocket, Marcus probably wondering if I was okay. I didn't check it. I couldn't talk to him yet, not when my thoughts were this tangled. I found myself walking toward the waterfront, toward the park where you could see the Manhattan skyline lit up across the East River. It was one of my favorite spots in the city, a place I came when I needed to think or decompress or remember why I loved New York in the first place. The rain had lightened to a drizzle by the time I reached the railing overlooking the water. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement, creating a double exposure of urban beauty. Manhattan rose up across the river, defiant and glittering, alive with millions of stories happening simultaneously. Thought I might find you here. I turned to find Sarah standing a few feet away, holding 2 cups of coffee from the 24-hour diner on the corner. Sarah, my best friend since college, my person, the one who'd introduced me to Marcus in the first place. How did you? I started. Marcus called me, she said, handing me one of the cups. He was worried, said you ran out in the rain after he told you about LA. I took the coffee gratefully, wrapping my cold hands around the warm paper cup. He told you about LA. He's been agonizing over it for weeks, Sarah said, leaning against the railing beside me. He called me like 10 times asking for advice on how to tell you. He should have told me sooner, I said, hearing the bitterness in my own voice. 3 weeks to decide if I'm going to upend my entire life, that's not fair. No, Sarah agreed. It's not fair, but Jamie, when is life ever fair? You think I thought it was fair when Daniel got that job offer in Singapore and I had to choose between my career and my marriage? I winced. Sarah and Daniel had divorced 2 years ago over exactly that kind of decision. She'd chosen her career, stayed in New York, and Daniel had gone to Singapore alone. They'd tried long distance for 6 months before admitting it wasn't working. That's not exactly a comforting comparison, I pointed out. I'm not trying to comfort you, Sarah said bluntly. I'm trying to be real with you because here's the thing, I made my choice and some days I regret it and some days I don't, but at least I made a choice, I didn't just let fear decide for me. I'm not afraid, I protested weakly. Sarah gave me a look that said she wasn't buying it. Jamie, you've been talking about going freelance for 3 years. You've been saying you want more adventure, more flexibility, more life outside of your routine. And now someone is handing you the perfect opportunity to do exactly that, and you're running away in the rain instead of even considering it. It's not that simple, I argued. What about my clients? What about my apartment? What about all the excuses you're making because you're terrified of change? Sarah interrupted. Look, I'm not saying you have to go, I'm not saying Marcus is right to ask this of you, but I am saying that you need to actually think about what you want, not just what you're afraid of losing. She was right. God, why was everyone right tonight? What if I go and I hate it? I whispered. What if we move all the way to LA and it ruins us? What if I resent him for asking me to give up everything? What if you stay and you resent him for not going? Sarah countered. What if he turns down this opportunity and it eats at him for the rest of your relationship? What if? You can what if yourself into paralysis, Jamie, or you can ask yourself the only question that really matters. Which is, do you love him enough to be brave? The question hung in the air between us, mixing with the mist from the rain. Do you love him enough to be brave? I thought about Marcus, about the way he looked at me like I was the most interesting thing in any room, about how he learned to make my grandmother's chocolate chip cookies from scratch just because I mentioned missing them, about the way he held me during thunderstorms because he knew they reminded me of the night my dad died, about how he left me little notes on the bathroom mirror before his early shifts just to make me smile when I woke up. I thought about the life we'd built in our small apartment, movie nights and lazy Sunday mornings and cooking disasters and inside jokes. The way we'd learned each other's rhythms, each other's needs, each other's languages. The way coming home felt different when Marcus was there. But I also thought about the life I'd been living before him. The dreams I'd had of being my own boss, of traveling, of taking risks. Dreams I'd put on the back burner because they felt too scary, too uncertain, too much. I don't know if I'm brave enough, I admitted to Sarah. She put her arm around my shoulders, pulling me close. Then maybe it's time to find out. I stayed out for another hour after Sarah left, nursing my coffee and watching the city lights dance on the water. My phone had buzzed 3 more times, twice from Marcus, once from my mom, but I still wasn't ready to face any of them. I needed to think, to really think about what I wanted from my life. When I finally walked back to the apartment, it was nearly midnight. I climbed the stairs slowly, dreading and anticipating the conversation ahead in equal measure. But when I opened the door, the apartment was dark except for a single lamp in the living room. Marcus was asleep on the couch, still in his jeans and Henley, one arm thrown over his eyes. On the coffee table sat a photo album I hadn't seen in months, the one we'd put together after our first year together, full of pictures and ticket stubs and memorabilia from our early days. I sat down carefully on the edge of the couch and Marcus stirred immediately. His internal alarm system never fully shut off, always ready to wake up at the slightest disturbance. Hazard of the job. "Hey," he said groggily, sitting up, "you came back." "Of course I came back," I said softly. "This is home." He rubbed his eyes and I could see how exhausted he was. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything I should have said differently, about how I should have brought this up weeks ago instead of springing it on you like this. "Why didn't you?" I asked. "Why wait until our anniversary?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Because I'm a coward," he finally said. "Because I knew it was going to be hard and I kept putting it off. And then I thought maybe on our anniversary, when we're celebrating what we've built together, it would feel less like I'm asking you to give something up and more like I'm asking you to build something new with me." "Did you look at the photo album?" I asked, gesturing to the table. He nodded. "I wanted to remember how we started, remember why we work. There's this picture in there from our first road trip, remember, when we drove up to the Catskills and your car broke down." I smiled despite myself. "And we had to wait 3 hours for a tow truck in that tiny diner that only served breakfast food." "Best pancakes I ever had," Marcus said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "You were so frustrated and I thought for sure you were going to lose it, but instead you ordered like 6 different types of pancakes and made me try all of them while you ranked them." "The blueberry were definitely superior," I said. "The blueberry were definitely superior," he agreed. We sat there in the dim light, the memory hanging between us like a warm blanket. "Jamie, I know I'm asking a lot, I know this isn't fair, but I keep thinking about all the adventures we haven't had yet, all the places we haven't seen, all the things we haven't tried. What if LA could be the start of something incredible? What if it's the end of us?" I countered. Marcus reached out and took my hand. "Then it was going to end anyway. Jamie, if our relationship can't survive a move, if it's so fragile that a change in location would break it, then maybe it's not as strong as I thought it was, and I don't believe that. I believe we're strong enough for anything." "That's easy for you to say," I said, and I could hear the tremor in my voice. "You're not the one giving up everything. You're getting a promotion, a new adventure, a fresh start. I'm the one who has to leave my job, my friends, my whole support system." "You're right," Marcus said, and his immediate agreement surprised me. "You're absolutely right. I'm asking you to sacrifice more than I am, and if you tell me right now that you can't do it, that it's too much, I will respect that. I will turn down this job and we'll figure something else out." "But you'll resent me," I said quietly. "No," Marcus said firmly, squeezing my hand. "I won't, because I love you more than I love any job, but Jamie, I need you to be honest with yourself about something. Are you saying no because you genuinely can't imagine leaving New York, or are you saying no because you're scared of taking a risk? The question hit me like a punch to the gut because it was the same thing Sarah had asked, just phrased differently. Was I saying no because I couldn't leave New York or because I was afraid to try? I don't know, I admitted. Marcus, I've lived here my whole life. This city is all I know. My dad is buried here, my mom is here, Sarah is here, everything that makes me who I am is tied to this place. I know, Marcus said gently, but baby, you're so much more than this city. You're talented and creative and adaptable. You could do your work from anywhere. And your mom would visit. Sarah would visit. We'd come back for holidays. It's not like we'd never see New York again. It won't be the same, I whispered. No, he agreed. It won't be the same, it'll be different. Maybe better, maybe worse, but definitely different. And I know that's scary. Change is always scary. But Jamie, we can't live our whole lives playing it safe just because we're afraid of different. I pulled my hand away, standing up and walking to the window. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets wet and glistening under the streetlights. I need more than 3 weeks to decide something like this. Okay, Marcus said, how much time do you need? I turned to look at him. He was still sitting on the couch, his hair sticking up from sleep, his eyes red with exhaustion, and I was struck by how much I loved him. How much I loved this man who ran into burning buildings, who called me in the middle of his shift just to hear my voice, who left his coffee black but always made mine exactly the way I liked it. I don't know, I said honestly. But Marcus, I need you to understand something. If I do this, if I agree to move to LA, I need to know it's because we're building a future together. Not just because you got a promotion. I need to know that you're in this, that we're partners in every sense of the word. Marcus stood up and crossed the room to me. He cupped my face in his hands, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. Jamie, I've been in this since the moment you spilled coffee all over my shirt and then tried to use hand sanitizer to clean it off. Despite everything, I laughed. That was not my finest moment. It was perfect, he said. You were perfect, you are perfect. And I don't have all the answers about how this is going to work or what our life in LA would look like. But I know that I want to figure it out with you. I want every adventure and every mistake and every boring Tuesday night with you. He kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise. And for a moment, everything else fell away, the fear, the uncertainty, the impossible decision hanging over us. For a moment, it was just us, just this, just the love we'd built over 3 years of mornings and midnights and everything in between. When we pulled apart, I rested my forehead against his. I'm going to need to visit LA, I said. Before I decide anything, I need to see it, see the station, see the neighborhood, see what our life could look like there. Done, Marcus said immediately. I'll book us flights for next weekend, we'll make a whole trip of it, I'll show you everything. And I want to talk to my mom, I continued. And my therapist. And I need to really think about my career, about what freelancing would actually look like, about whether it's something I can realistically do. Okay, Marcus agreed. Whatever you need, just, Jamie, don't let fear make this decision for you, promise me that. I nodded against his forehead. I promise, but Marcus, you have to promise me something too. Anything. Promise me that if I can't do this, if I decide I need to stay in New York, you won't pretend it's okay. Promise me you'll tell me if you resent me, if you regret staying. I'd rather lose you honest than keep you pretending. Marcus pulled back to look me in the eyes. I promise, he said solemnly. But Jamie, I don't think that's going to happen, because I really do believe that wherever we are, as long as we're together, that's where I'm meant to be. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. The week passed in a blur of anxious planning and difficult conversations. I told my boss about the possibility of leaving, framing it as a maybe, just exploring options, but I could see the disappointment in her face. I'd been with the firm for 5 years, and despite my complaints about lack of creativity and corporate restrictions, they valued my work. My conversation with my mom was harder. We met for lunch at the Italian place we'd been going to since I was a kid, the one that still had my height marked on the doorframe from when I was 8 years old. LA, she repeated, setting down her fork with a sharp clink. Jamie, that's across the country. I know, Mom. Your father's grave is here. The words hit like she knew they would, a calculated strike designed to make me feel guilty. I know that too, I said quietly, but Dad's been gone for 6 years and I don't think he'd want me to build my life around visiting a cemetery. My mom's face softened. She reached across the table and took my hand. You're right, she said. I'm sorry, that was unfair of me. It's just, you're all I have left, honey, the thought of you being so far away. You could visit, I offered. LA has great weather, and we'd come back for Christmas and Thanksgiving. You wouldn't lose me, Mom, you just have to get on a plane to see me. She smiled sadly. When did you get so grown up? I've been grown up for a while, Mom. You just didn't notice because I was too scared to actually act like it. That evening, I had my therapy session with Dr. Martinez, the therapist I'd been seeing since my dad died. I'd been dreading it and looking forward to it in equal measure. So, Dr. Martinez said, settling into her chair across from me, tell me about this decision you're facing. I poured it all out, the promotion, the move, the fear. The uncertainty, the feeling of being torn between the life I had and the life I could have. Dr. Martinez listened without interruption, her face neutral and attentive. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Jamie, I'm going to ask you something and I want you to really think about your answer. If Marcus weren't part of this equation, if this was just about you and your career and your life, would you want to move to LA? The question caught me off guard. I don't know, I've never really thought about it. Think about it now, she prompted. Imagine LA, a new city, new opportunities, a chance to start over. Does that excite you or terrify you? I closed my eyes and tried to imagine it. LA sunshine instead of New York winters, palm trees instead of subway trains, a freelance career where I could work from coffee shops or the beach or wherever I wanted, starting over somewhere no one knew me as Jamie whose dad died or Jamie who's always played it safe. Both, I finally said. It excites me and terrifies me. Good, Dr. Martinez said. That's a good sign. The things worth doing are usually the ones that scare us. But Jamie, I want you to think about something else. For the past 6 years since your father died, you've been playing it safe. Safe job, safe apartment, safe routines. And I understand why grief makes us want to hold on tight to what we have. But at some point, holding on tight stops being about safety and starts being about fear. So you think I should go, I said. I think you should make a decision based on what you want your life to look like in 5 years, not based on what feels safest right now. Whether that means going or staying, only you can decide. But make sure you're choosing what you want, not just what you're afraid to lose. The following Friday, Marcus and I boarded a plane to Los Angeles. I'd barely slept the night before, my mind racing with possibilities and anxieties. Marcus held my hand during takeoff, his thumb tracing circles on my palm, a familiar gesture that usually calmed me but today only reminded me of what was at stake. LA greeted us with sunshine and warmth that felt almost aggressive after New York's autumn chill. Marcus had rented a car, and as we drove from Lax toward the city, I pressed my face against the window, trying to see this place as a potential home rather than just a vacation destination. It was different from New York in every way. Where New York was vertical and dense, LA sprawled out horizontally, neighborhoods bleeding into one another without clear boundaries. Where New York was concrete and steel, LA was palm trees and stucco. Where New York moved fast, LA seemed to drift along at its own pace. What do you think? Marcus asked as we sat in traffic on the 405. It's different, I said diplomatically. He laughed. That's one word for it. The traffic's terrible, I'll give you that. But Jamie, wait until you see the neighborhood. I think you're going to love it. The neighborhood in question was Silver Lake, an artsy, hilly area northeast of downtown. Marcus had arranged for us to tour a few rental houses, and as we pulled up to the first one, I felt my skepticism waver slightly. It was a small Spanish-style bungalow with a front garden full of succulents and a view of the reservoir from the back patio. Inside, it was all hardwood floors and arched doorways and windows that let in floods of California sunshine. The rent's about the same as what we're paying in Brooklyn, Marcus said, watching my face carefully as I explored. But look at this, an actual yard, a real kitchen, 2 bedrooms so you could have a dedicated office space for your freelance work. I walked through the empty house, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood. There was a built-in bookshelf in the living room that would be perfect for all our books. The kitchen had actual counter space, unlike our tiny New York galley kitchen. The second bedroom was small but had perfect afternoon light, ideal for a home office. The landlord said we could paint, Marcus added. make it our own. I turned to look at him and the hope in his eyes was almost painful. He wanted this so badly, not just the job but this life, this fresh start, this next chapter. Can we see the firehouse? I asked. Marcus's face lit up. Yeah, absolutely, it's just a 15-minute drive from here. The Los Angeles County Fire Station 7 was bigger than Marcus's station in Brooklyn, busier and more modern. Captain Rodriguez, the man who'd told Marcus about the position, gave us a tour. He was in his mid-40s with an easy smile and genuine warmth. Marcus has told me a lot about you, he said, shaking my hand. Says you're a graphic designer. I am, I confirmed, though I'm thinking about going freelance. Oh, you do great out here, Rodriguez said enthusiastically. LA has a huge creative community, lots of startups, entertainment industry folks, people always looking for good designers. My wife's a photographer, she could probably connect you with some people. We watched as the crew ran drills as Marcus talked with the other firefighters as he examined the equipment with the kind of focus and excitement I hadn't seen in him in months. This wasn't just a promotion. This was Marcus finding his place, his purpose, his calling in a way he hadn't in New York. He's good, Rodriguez said, coming to stand beside me as Marcus examined one of the trucks. Really good, he's exactly the kind of leader this station needs. You'd be proud of him here. I'm already proud of him, I said quietly. Rodriguez nodded. I can tell, and I can tell he's crazy about you. He's called me like 10 times in the past week asking about neighborhoods, about schools. Do you guys have kids? No, not yet. Well, he's been asking about schools anyway, planning ahead, I guess. Point is, he wants to make sure this works for both of you. That's a good man you've got there. I knew that, I'd always known that, but hearing it from a near stranger somehow made it more real. That evening, Marcus took me to dinner at a restaurant in Silver Lake that his friend had recommended. It was small and cozy, with string lights overhead and a menu full of California fusion cuisine that would have seemed pretentious in New York but somehow worked here. So, Marcus continues 0041 said after we'd ordered, what do you think, honestly? I took a sip of my wine, buying time to organize my thoughts. It's beautiful here, the house was great, the firehouse was impressive, I can see why you want this. But, he prompted, reading the hesitation in my voice. But it's not home, I said softly, and I don't know if it ever could be. Marcus's face fell, but he nodded. Okay, that's fair, it's only been one day, we've got the whole weekend. Rest of the weekend, Marcus made good on his promise to show me everything. We drove along the Pacific Coast Highway, the ocean stretching out endlessly to our left. We hiked in Griffith Park and looked out over the city from the observatory. We explored Venice Beach in Santa Monica and downtown LA. We met up with some of Marcus's friends from the Fire Academy who'd relocated to California, and they took us to their favorite spots, taco trucks and coffee shops and bookstores and bars. And slowly, reluctantly, I started to see the appeal. LA had a creative energy that was different from New York's hustle. It was more relaxed but no less vibrant. The weather was gorgeous, the food was incredible, and everywhere we went, people seemed genuinely happy to be alive. On our last night, we drove up to the Griffith Observatory at sunset. The sky turned pink and orange and purple as the sun dipped toward the Pacific, and the city lights began to twinkle to life below us. Look, Marcus said, pointing. You can see the whole city from here. Downtown, Hollywood, Century City, Santa Monica, even downtown Long Beach on a clear day. I looked out over the sprawling metropolis, trying to imagine making a life here. Trying to imagine waking up to sunshine instead of sirens, driving instead of taking the subway, saying the 405 instead of the L train. Jamie, Marcus said quietly, I need to tell you something. I turned to look at him, and my heart sank at the seriousness in his expression. I've been thinking a lot this weekend, he continued. Watching you, seeing how hard you're trying to like it here even though I can tell it's not clicking for you, and I realized something. I realized that I was being selfish. Marcus. No, let me finish, he said. I was so focused on this being my dream opportunity that I didn't really stop to think about what I was asking of you. You're right, you'd be giving up everything. Your job, your friends, your mom, your therapist, your whole support system, and I'd be asking you to give all that up so I can chase a promotion. It's not just a promotion, I argued. It's your career, it's important. So is your happiness, said firmly. So is our relationship, and if you can't be happy here, then what's the point? I don't want a promotion if it costs me you. I felt tears prick at my eyes. What are you saying? Took my hands in his. I'm saying I'm going to call Captain tomorrow and tell him I can't take the position. I'm staying in New York. No. Yes, he insisted. You're more important than any job. I should have realized that before I ever brought this up. I should have. Stop, I interrupted. Stop, you're not turning down this job. He looked confused, but you just said LA doesn't feel like home. I said it doesn't feel like home yet, I corrected. I've lived in New York my entire life. Of course, a new city isn't going to feel like home after 3 days. That's not how it works. So what are you saying? He asked carefully. I took a deep breath, and as I did, I felt something shift inside me, a decision crystallizing, becoming solid and real. I'm saying yes, I said. I'm saying let's do this. Let's move to LA. Eyes went wide. What, are you serious? You don't have to. I know I don't have to, I said, but I want to. Dr. Martinez asked me this week what I would want if you weren't part of the equation, and I've been thinking about it all weekend. And the truth is, yeah, I'd be terrified, but I'd also be excited. I'd be excited to start my own freelance business. I'd be excited to explore a new city. I'd be excited to take a risk for once in my safe, comfortable life. Are you sure? Asked, and I could hear the hope fighting with concern in his voice. Because I need you to be sure. I can't have you resenting me for this down the line. I'm sure, I said, and I meant it. I'm not saying it won't be hard. I'm not saying I won't miss New York or my mom or Sarah, but you were right. I've been playing it safe for too long, and maybe it's time to be brave. Pulled me into his arms, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. I love you, he whispered against my hair. I love you so much, and I promise I'm going to make this worth it. I'm going to make sure you're happy here. We're going to make each other happy, I corrected. That's how this works, remember, we're partners. He pulled back just enough to kiss me, and this kiss was different from all the others. This was a kiss that tasted like promises and new beginnings and chosen family and shared futures. This was a kiss that felt like coming home and setting out on an adventure at the same time. When we finally pulled apart, the sun had fully set and the city below us was lit up like a constellation. Millions of lives happening simultaneously, millions of stories being written. So we're really doing this? Asked, his smile so wide it made my chest ache. We're really doing this, I confirmed. We're moving to Los Angeles. The next 2 months were a whirlwind of logistics and emotions. I gave notice at my firm, and my boss surprised me by offering to keep me on as a remote contractor for a few months while I built up my freelance client base. It was more than I'd hoped for, a safety net that made the leap feel slightly less terrifying. Packing up our apartment was harder than I'd anticipated. Every item we wrapped in newspaper, every box we taped shut felt like closing a chapter. The coffee maker that had been a gift from Sarah when we moved in together. The ridiculous ceramic lamp we'd bought at a flea market on our second date. The framed photo from our first Pride parade together, both of us grinning and covered in rainbow stickers. You okay? Asked, finding me sitting on the floor of our bedroom surrounded by half-packed boxes, holding a snow globe I'd gotten on a trip to the... I'm being sentimental, I admitted. Remember this, you bought it for me at that rest stop when my car broke down. He sat down beside me, taking the snow globe and shaking it gently. Tiny flakes swirled around a miniature mountain scene. I remember thinking you were the person I'd ever seen, all frustrated and stressed out, ranking pancakes like it was an Olympic sport. Those pancakes were serious business, I said, but I was smiling. They were, he agreed. He set the snow globe aside and pulled me close. We can still back out if this is too hard, if you're having second thoughts. I'm not having second thoughts, I interrupted. I'm having feelings about leaving. That's different. I'm allowed to be sad about leaving New York while also being excited about LA. You're right, he said, kissing the top of my head. You're absolutely right. I just want to make sure you're okay. I'm okay, I said, and I meant it. It was okay to grieve what I was leaving while looking forward to what was coming. Both things could be true at once. We threw a goodbye party the week before we left, cramming all our friends into our small apartment one last time. Sarah brought a cake decorated with a tiny edible Brooklyn Bridge on one side and the Hollywood sign on the other. My mom came, looking brave and trying not to cry. Crew from the firehouse showed up, including Captain Williams, who'd been his mentor for years. You're making the right move, Williams said, clapping on the shoulder. Gonna miss having you around, but you're ready for this. You've been ready for a while. Thanks, Cap said, and I could see how much the words meant to him. Sarah cornered me in the kitchen while I was refilling the chip bowl. So this is really happening, she said. This is really happening, I confirmed. You promise you'll call me, like at least once a week. At least once a week, I promised. And you have to promise you'll visit. I'm going to need my best friend when I inevitably have a meltdown about all of this. Sarah pulled me into a fierce hug. I'm so proud of you, she said into my shoulder. You're doing the scary thing, you're being brave. I'm terrified, I admitted. Brave people are always terrified, she said, pulling back to look at me. That's what makes them brave. You're going to be amazing out there. You're going to build this incredible freelance business and live in that cute bungalow and have adventures, and you're going to be so happy. I'm going to miss you so much. I'm going to miss you too, but dude, I'm definitely coming to visit. I need a California vacation. The hardest goodbye was my mom. She came over the morning of our departure to help us finish packing, but really, I think she just wanted those last few hours with me. I put some things in your suitcase, she said as we were loading the last boxes into the U-Haul. Your dad's old Yankees cap, that recipe book from Grandma, some photos, things to make LA feel a little more like home. Mom, I said, my voice thick with tears. Oh, stop, she said, waving her hand even as her own eyes filled. You're going to make me cry, and I promised myself I wouldn't cry. This is a good thing. This is you living your life, having adventures, being young. Your father would be so proud of you. You think so? I know so, she said firmly. He always said you played things too safe, that you needed to take more risks. Well, this is a pretty big risk. She cupped my face in her hands the way she used to when I was little. I love you so much, and I'm going to visit at Christmas, okay? So make sure you have that guest room set up. I will, I promised. I love you, Mom. She hugged me tight, and for a moment I was 8 years old again, being held by the person who'd always made me feel safe. But then she pulled back and smiled, even though tears were streaming down her face. Go, she said, go start your new life and call me when you get there. Marcus and I had decided to drive across the country rather than fly, turning the move into a road trip. 5 days from New York to Los Angeles, stopping at national parks and roadside attractions and anywhere else that caught our interest. As we pulled away from our apartment building for the last time, I looked back at the brick facade, at the window that had been ours for 3 years. The apartment where we'd built our life together, where we'd had our first fight and our first makeup, where we'd celebrated holidays and mourned losses and grown into ourselves. Goodbye, New York, I whispered. Marcus reached over and took my hand, ready for the next chapter. I took one last look at the city skyline in the rearview mirror, at the place that had been my home for my entire life. And then I turned to face forward toward the road ahead, toward the unknown. Yeah, I said, I'm ready. The drive across America was like nothing I'd ever experienced. We made it through Pennsylvania on day 1, stopping for the night in Pittsburgh. Marcus had found a quirky bed and breakfast near the city center, and we spent the evening walking through the downtown area, marveling at how different it felt from New York. You good? Marcus asked as we were getting ready for bed that first night. I thought about it. My body was tired from the drive, my mind was swirling with thoughts of everything we'd left behind, but underneath all of that was something else. Something that felt almost like excitement. Yeah, I said, I think I am. Day 2 took us through Ohio and into Indiana. We stopped at a tiny diner somewhere in the middle of nowhere for lunch, and the waitress asked where we were headed. Los Angeles, Marcus told her, starting over. She refilled our coffee and smiled. Good for you, I did the same thing 30 years ago, moved from Kentucky to Indiana, and everyone thought I was crazy. Best decision I ever made. It was a small moment, but it stuck with me. This idea that people made these leaps all the time, that starting over wasn't some impossible feat but something humans had been doing forever. Day 3 was all Midwest, endless stretches of highway through Illinois and Missouri and into Kansas. Marcus let me pick the music, and we listened to our old playlists, the ones from our early days of dating. Each song brought back a memory, and we spent hours reminiscing. Remember when we went to that concert in Central Park? I asked as one particular song came on, and it started pouring rain halfway through. And you were convinced we were going to get struck by lightning, Marcus laughed, but you refused to leave because you loved the band too much. We were soaked for hours. Worth it, Marcus said. That was the night I knew I was falling in love with you. I turned to look at him. Really, you never told me that. You were singing along in the rain, completely off-key, not caring that you were drenched or that your makeup was running. You were just you, completely, authentically you, and I remember thinking, this is it. This is the person I want to be with. My eyes filled with tears. I love you so much. I love you too, and Jamie, I'm so grateful you're doing this with me. I know it's scary, I know you're giving up a lot, but I promise I'm going to spend every day trying to make it worth it. That night we stayed in a motel somewhere in western Kansas, the kind of place with thin walls and questionable bedding, but we didn't care. We ordered pizza from the only place that delivered, and we sat on the bed eating straight from the box and planning our future. Okay, so first thing when we get to LA, we set up your office, Marcus said. Make sure you have the perfect workspace for the freelance business. And we explore the neighborhood, I added. Find our coffee shop, our grocery store, our regular spots. We should join a gym, Marcus suggested, or find a good hiking spot. The trails around here are supposed to be amazing. We need to make friends, I said. Actual friends, not just people we know through work. Rodriguez said his wife could introduce you to her photography friends, Marcus reminded me, and there's a few guys at the station who are around our age. I think we'd get along with them. We were building it piece by piece, our new life, our new normal, and with each thing we planned, it felt more real, more possible. Day 4 took us through Colorado, and we decided to take a detour through Rocky Mountain National Park. The mountains rose up around us, massive and breathtaking, and we pulled over at an overlook to take it all in. It's beautiful, I breathed, looking out at the peaks. Not as beautiful as you, Marcus said, and I rolled my eyes even as I smiled. That was cheesy. But true, he insisted, wrapping his arms around me from behind. We stood there for a long time, looking out at the vast wilderness, at the world stretched out before us. Marcus, I said quietly. Yes. Thank you for pushing me to do this, for not letting me play it safe. He kissed the side of my head. Thank you for trusting me, for being brave enough to take this leap with me. We drove through Utah on day 5, and the landscape became increasingly alien and beautiful, red rocks and desert vistas unlike anything in New York. We stopped at every scenic overlook, took 100 photos, marveled at how big and diverse and amazing the country was. I can't believe I've lived my whole life in one city, I said as we drove through the desert. There's so much out here. There's a whole world out here, Marcus agreed. And we're going to explore all of it. Weekend road trips to Joshua Tree, Vegas, San Diego, Big Sur. We're going to see everything, Jamie. As the sun began to set on that 5th day, we crossed the border into California. The sign appeared on the side of the highway, "Welcome to California," and Marcus whooped, reaching over to squeeze my hand. We made it, he shouted. We actually made it. I felt something shift in my chest, a mixture of relief and anticipation and pure joy. We'd done it. We'd driven across the entire country. We'd left our old life behind, and we were heading toward our new one. We drove through the darkness, the lights of Los Angeles beginning to appear in the distance, growing brighter and more numerous as we got closer. And then, suddenly we were there. We were in Los Angeles. Navigating the still busy freeways, following the GPS toward Silver Lake, toward the bungalow that would be our new home. Marcus pulled into the driveway at 11:47 p.m. on January 31st. We sat in the car for a moment, both of us too tired to move, looking at the dark house that was now ours. Ready? Marcus finally asked. I looked at the house, at this place I'd seen only once before, at what would be our home for at least the next year. It didn't feel like home yet, but maybe, with time, it would. Ready? I said. The first month in Los Angeles was harder than I'd expected, but also better in ways I hadn't anticipated. The hard parts were obvious. The loneliness, the disorientation, the constant feeling of not quite knowing where anything was or how anything worked. I missed New York viscerally, missed the way I could navigate it with my eyes closed, missed the rhythm of the city that had been my backbeat for 29 years. But the good parts surprised me. Like the morning I woke up and realized I'd slept past 9 without an alarm, sunlight streaming through our bedroom window instead of traffic noise waking me at dawn. Like the first time I worked from a coffee shop in Silver Lake and struck up a conversation with another freelancer who ended up referring me to a major client. Like the Saturday Marcus and I drove to the beach and spent the entire day doing absolutely nothing but reading and swimming and eating overpriced fish tacos. You seem happy, Marcus observed one evening. We were cooking dinner together in our actual, real kitchen with actual counter space, something that still felt like a luxury after our tiny New York apartment. I think I am, I said, surprised to realize it was true. It's weird, I still miss New York, I miss my mom and Sarah and my old routine, but I don't know, I'm enjoying this. Marcus grinned, pulling me close. I told you. Don't get cocky, I warned, but I was smiling. We're only a month in, ask me again in 6 months. I will, he promised. Every month for the rest of our lives, I'm going to ask you if you're happy, and if the answer is ever no, we'll figure it out together. My freelance business took off faster than I'd expected. The client that coffee shop acquaintance had referred me to was a startup in Santa Monica, and they needed a complete rebrand. It was exactly the kind of creative work I'd been craving, the kind I'd never gotten to do at my corporate job in New York. I threw myself into it, working from my new home office with its perfect afternoon light, taking breaks to walk around the reservoir, meeting with clients at trendy cafes in Silver Lake and Los Feliz. And slowly I started to build a network. The photographer who was Rodriguez's wife, Maria, introduced me to her creative friends. I joined a parking space and met other freelancers. I started to feel less like a transplant and more like someone who actually lived here. Marcus was thriving too. The work at Station 7 was intense, busier than his old station in Brooklyn, more varied emergencies, more responsibility as a lieutenant, but he loved it. He came home exhausted but energized, full of stories about his crew and the calls they'd run. They're good people, he told me one night as we sat on our back patio looking out at the city lights. Different from the guys in Brooklyn, but good. I think we're going to build something really special at that station. 3 months in, Sarah came to visit. I picked her up from Lax on a Friday afternoon, and when she walked out of arrivals and spotted me, she ran and jumped into my arms like we were in a movie. I missed you so much, she shouted, not caring that we were blocking foot traffic. I missed you too, I shouted back, and then we were both crying and laughing and probably annoying everyone around us. I took her everywhere that weekend, hiking in Runyon Canyon, brunch in Venice, shopping on Melrose, dinner at all my new favorite restaurants. And I watched her fall in love with LA the way I had been slowly, reluctantly falling in love with it. Okay, I get it now, she said on Saturday night as we sat at a rooftop bar in downtown LA, the city spread out beneath us. I get why you stayed, this place is pretty incredible. It is, I agreed. It's not New York, but it's good, it's really good. And you're happy. I thought about it, really thought about it. Was I happy? I still missed New York sometimes, I still got homesick. I still had days where everything felt unfamiliar and overwhelming, but underneath all of that. Yeah, I said, I'm happy, I'm really genuinely happy. Sarah raised her glass, to new beginnings and to being brave enough to chase them. We clinked glasses and I felt something settle in my chest, a sense of rightness of being exactly where I was supposed to be. 6 months into our Los Angeles life on a warm July evening, Marcus suggested we take a drive up the Pacific Coast Highway to watch the sunset. We'd done it a few times before, it was one of our favorite things about LA, the way you could just drive for an hour and be somewhere completely different. But tonight felt different somehow. Marcus was quieter than usual, a nervous energy radiating off him that I couldn't quite place. You okay? I asked as we drove north past Malibu. Yeah, he said, but his hand was tight on the steering wheel, just thinking. About what? About us, about this? He gestured vaguely at everything, the ocean, the car, the life we'd built. About how 6 months ago we were in Brooklyn packing boxes and now we're here. Crazy, right? I said. Sometimes I still can't believe we actually did it. Do you regret it? He asked suddenly. Be honest, Jamie, do you ever regret moving here? I considered the question carefully. Did I regret it? There were things I missed about New York, definitely, but regret. No, I said honestly, I don't regret it, do you? Not for a second, he said immediately. Best decision I ever made, well, second best. What was the first? Asking you out on that first date, he said, and even after 3.5 years it made my heart flutter. He pulled off at a secluded overlook, one we'd never been to before. The sun was just beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. The beach below was empty except for a few surfers catching the last waves of the day. Marcus turned off the car but didn't move to get out. He just sat there, staring out at the ocean, his jaw tight. Marcus, seriously, what's going on? I asked. You're freaking me out a little. He turned to look at me and there was something in his eyes, fear and love and determination all mixed together. Jamie, that night 6 months ago when I told you about LA, I said something. Do you remember what it was? I thought back, you said a lot of things. I said that I wanted to know if we were building toward something bigger, if we were partners. If we were in this together. I remember, I said softly. Well, we are, he said. We're partners, we moved across the country together, we built a whole new life together, and these past 6 months watching you thrive here, watching you be brave and take risks and build your business and make friends, Jumma, you've been incredible. So have you, I said, confused about where this was going. I want to keep building with you, Muckas continued. Not just for 6 months or a year or until the next big decision comes along. I want to build a whole life with you. I want to buy a house together and adopt a dog together and maybe someday have kids together. I want to grow old with you and fight with you and make up with you and have boring Tuesday nights with you for the rest of my life. My heart started pounding. Was he saying what I thought he was saying? Muckas reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Jumma Sullivan, he said, his voice shaking slightly, will you marry me? He opened the box and inside was a simple silver band with a small diamond, understated and perfect and exactly my style. I stared at the ring, at Muckas, at this moment that I'd imagined 1,000 times but never quite like this. The sun was setting over the Pacific, we were in California, in this new life we'd built together, and the man I loved was asking me to marry him. Yes, I whispered, yes, of course, yes. Muckasa's face broke into the biggest smile I'd ever seen. He pulled the ring from the box with shaking hands and slid it onto my finger. It fit perfectly. I've been carrying that around for 3 weeks, he admitted, pulling me into his arms. I've been trying to find the perfect moment, but I kept chickening out. This is perfect, I said, looking down at the ring on my finger at this symbol of forever. Muckas, this is absolutely perfect. He kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Epilogue 1 year later. It's our first anniversary in Los Angeles and our 4th anniversary as a couple. We're back at that same overlook on the Pacific Coast Highway, watching another sunset, but this time there are more of us. Sarah flew in from New York, my mom is visiting for the week, and Muckasa's parents made the trip from San Francisco. We're having a small engagement party, just family and close friends, the people who matter most. Maria and Rodriguez are here, along with a few of Muckasa's crew from Station 7. My New York boss even flew out, along with 2 of my former Kukas have become good friends. As I look around at all these people, the life we've built, the community we've created, the family we've chosen, I think about that night a year ago when Muckas first told me about LA. How terrified I was. How certain I was that leaving New York would be a mistake. But standing here now, wearing my engagement ring, watching the sun set over the Pacific while surrounded by people I love in a city I never expected to call home, I realize something. The thing that scared me the most ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me. I was afraid to leave New York because I thought it defined me. I thought my identity was tied up in that city, in my routines, in my safe, comfortable life. But moving to LA taught me that I'm so much more than the place I'm from. I'm a person who can adapt, who can take risks, who can be brave when it matters. What are you thinking about? Muckas asks, coming up behind me and wrapping his arms around my waist. Just how far we've come, I say, leaning back against his chest. A year ago, I couldn't imagine leaving New York, and now I can't imagine being anywhere but here. No regrets, he asks, and I hear the smile in his voice. Not a single one, I say honestly. Well, maybe one. What's that? I wish I'd been brave enough to do this sooner, to take the leap, to trust us. We wasted time being scared. We weren't wasting time, Mukaz says, turning me around to face him. We were building a foundation. We needed those 3 years in New York to be ready for this. Everything happened exactly when it was supposed to. He's right. Of course he's right. Those 3 years in New York weren't wasted, they were essential. They taught us how to be partners, how to communicate, how to weather storms together, and that foundation was exactly what we needed to make this leap. Sarah comes over, wine glass in hand, and puts her arm around both of us. You guys are disgustingly happy, she says, but she's grinning. I love it. I also hate it, but mostly I love it. When are you moving out here? Mukaz asks her. Never, Sarah says firmly. I'm a New York girl through and through, but I'll visit, often, very often. You better, I say, hugging her tight. My mom appears with a camera. Let me get a picture of you three. Oh, this light is perfect. As we pose for the photo, I catch Mukaz's eye and he winks at me. This moment right here is everything. It's scary and beautiful and imperfect and absolutely right. Later, after everyone has left and Mukaz and I are cleaning up, I find myself back at that same spot where he proposed, looking out at the dark ocean. The stars are out now, bright and clear in a way they never were in New York. Mukaz joins me and we stand there in comfortable silence, his hand in mine. You know what I realized, I say. What's that? Home isn't a place, it's not New York or LA or anywhere else. Home is you, home is us, as long as we're together, we're home. Mukaz pulls me close and I can feel his smile against my hair. I love you, Jumma, thank you for being brave enough to build this life with me. I love you too, I say, thank you for making me brave enough to try. And standing there under the California stars in this city that's become ours with this man who's become my home, I know with absolute certainty that we made the right choice. Sometimes the things that scare us the most are exactly the things we need to do. Sometimes taking a leap means losing your footing for a while. Sometimes starting over means letting go of everything you thought you knew. But sometimes, if you're very lucky, if you're very brave, if you're with the right person, sometimes taking that leap is exactly what leads you home.